So let's just have a look again. I always find it useful to look at the general ALTI can-do statements. Here we have A2 and B1. And it always strikes me when I look at these how simple A2 is. In fact, one of the words that comes up again and again is simple. Direct exchange. Familiar topics and activities. Very short social exchanges. And we have to ask ourselves, is this what we are assessing or not? Are we expecting too much of our candidates? B1 is already more sophisticated. We talk about connecting phrases, describing experiences and events, dreams, hopes and ambitions, and we talk about giving reasons and explanations for opinions. So there's a big difference, in fact, between A2 and B1 here. I also said that I wanted to look at a particular example of level at work. Now, this came out of a class that I was teaching, and it was an intensive course. We'd read a text on Easter traditions, and there's a tradition in Poland, apparently, called watering, which I'd never heard of, and neither had the students in class. I think what happens is that people sprinkle water on each other in the street at Easter time. So we were wondering about the origins of this, and the next day, one of my students came into class and said this. Now, you obviously can't see the pronunciation here, and you can't see the interaction, but the interaction with me was very natural. And let's just have a look at these in the light of the criteria we looked at before. I've colour-coded it. Red is grammar, yellow is lexical. And if we look at this, I spoke to my boyfriend about Easter in Poland. He said me that this water tradition is very old. We can already see awareness of the past, an attempt to use more complex structures here. We've got indirect speech, awareness of pronouns. So another one here, he said it is connect with Christianity. Another attempt at using a more complicated sentence structure. The lexical, again, we have correct use of prepositions. We have some lovely collocation here as well. The water tradition, connect with Christianity. Okay, there's an error, but nice collocation here. If we look at the discourse management, which is purple, we can see nice use of cohesion. We've got pronouns, we've got demonstratives. I've lost the cursor. Here it is, okay, demonstratives, and also logical connection with connectors like when. So, nice awareness of cohesion there. And this is also extremely relevant and extended using complex sentences. Pronunciation, as I said, it was clear. There were problems with weak forms, which is something that this girl could work on, but on the whole, it was clear and comprehensible. And interactive communication was very natural. And she was, in fact, developing something we'd already been talking about, so very natural there. So what level would you rate this at? I'm sure most people would think that this is a B1 level, but in fact, this was in an A2 group, and all the students in this class had been assessed at an A2 level, which shows that the level changes completely according to context, as we've seen before. The implications of this, to my mind, are that we can't take just one sample of language, one performance, and take it as an assessment, because level changes according to context, for the better or for the worse. So what we need is something that has something in the middle so that we can find some kind of a general assessment. if I'd had longer, I would have shown you these DVDs as well. These are DVDs that were developed for benchmarking purposes by the European Council in 2008 in France, and they're extremely useful because you can find the language you're interested in and the level. You can watch the DVDs of secondary school children. They're not teenagers, they are. And then there are comments in PDF files for each of the languages. So it's very useful. But if you do watch this, you will see that in fact there's quite a difference between... They ask them to do monologues and then they show two working together. There's a paired format as well. And the monologues, where I think they have the chance to prepare what they're going to say, are... they produce much more sophisticated language. So this again shows that different tasks and different contexts and time to plan all affect performance. We haven't got time to look at these today. This is the link, and on your reference sheet I've put another link as well to another project that produced some interesting benchmarking videos. But let's move on. What this makes me think is that a mixture of formal testing and continuous assessment may be the answer. The European framework outlines this again by saying that what many teachers already do is mark homework and do occasional regular short achievement tests in class. They also suggest these things can be thought about, but we would not be using achievement tests because really, as I said before, what we're interested in is mastery. Other suggestions made by the CEFR are checklists or grids, which can be filled in occasionally or regularly by learners and teachers. Series of focus tasks, which are assessed throughout the school or the university year. Formal assessment of coursework, a portfolio, samples of work, possibly in different stages of drafting or at different stages in the course. So these are all useful suggestions from the CEFR. But to my mind, we're still using the basket approach. The basket approach was something that was talked about a lot in the conference in Barcelona, where they were referring to levels, that we take an item and we test it at one level and perhaps not at another level. But we do the same thing with skills. We test speaking, we test writing. We don't put them together, but there's no real reason in continuous assessment why we couldn't actually introduce a task-based assessment, I think, where we have a complete task using integrated skills, and then various stages of this would be assessed, perhaps by means of a portfolio or other means. For example, in our written B1 test at the moment, the final exam is, part of the final exam is to write an email. So there's no reason why we should not be doing integrated skills work in class to prepare for this. Things like, for example, reading an email from someone else, doing listening work on a meeting, then planning something in groups, oral work, which could then lead to the final email that's in the exam. Various stages here could be assessed, and the email in the exam, the learners would know that it would be based on something that they'd done in class, but they wouldn't know what it was, to ensure exam security. Exam preparation can also be practiced as part of this, and experimentation. So task-based assessment in a continuous assessment framework is also part of the learning process, as well as providing opportunities for assessment. So, task-based assessment, the advantages of this would be it will be a realistic performance. it should be relevant to learners. For example, our learners who are quite young, when would they actually produce a monologue? Perhaps for YouTube, introducing yourself to a pen friend, or talking about your favorite activity, or asking for help. I saw an interesting one on TV last night where somebody had sent a video asking to help to a television program. There are lots of opportunities for relevant YouTube monologues if we want to test monologues. Planning time. This gives them the chance to plan what they're going to say and to produce these videos, as do the other activities that we just talked about that come out of the integrated skills work. And it also, task-based assessment like this would also ensure a reassuring, supportive environment. This would be in the class, not in the exam. And the learners would be fully engaged because they're not just working for the test, they're working for other things too. So this is one way forward, I think, to go from the confused, insecure performance to the superstar or the champion performance. In conclusion, assessment of oral level is a balancing act because of this change in constantly changing level, I think. Oral tests need to be designed with tasks that are candidate relevant and are appropriate for the level being tested. Proficiency needs to be assessed in certification tests, not achievement. Raters need to be trained and standardized. The criteria must also reflect the norm for the particular level. Level is not a constant. And ultimately, what this makes me think is that a balance of formal testing and continuous assessment is probably one of the most objective ways of assessing learner performance, if we have to find some way of measuring the unmeasurable, which to some extent is what level is. So that's it from me. Thank you and goodbye from Verona.